You wanted to leave a comment on the new retail WoW video on the Sage channel, but I think it could be better here. I don't understand the hate about today's retail when your experience is 10 years old. Kish, I don't hate retail. I just have no particular interest in it. You have to remember that the Twitch streams are just 8 hours of uninterrupted flow state of me talking. It's not like I have thought through everything that I'm saying and curated it. The famous saying, if I had longer, I would have written a shorter letter. I don't hate retail. I just have no particular interest in playing it. If you enjoy playing it, then great. I'm glad for you. I'm happy for you. I will support you playing that as long as you want to play it for. Sounds good. I have no particular hatred for the game. I just also have no real desire to play it. Is retail modern WoW? Yes. Classic to me just has like a really chill vibe, which I like. And that's the vibe I'm going to kind of continue with. People sometimes think that on Twitch I give, the greatest opinion I could possibly give, when I have to explain that so much of whatever I'm talking about, it's basically just me making stuff up as I go along. Sometimes I'm going to say some real dumb stuff, and that's just kind of unfortunately, the reality. That I'm not going to think through everything. Zayu was reacting to your vids the other day, which will get a new audience too who might not understand that. That's fair. I mean, if people want to watch the videos and come in there to have a chat, that's absolutely fine. But I think what I sometimes have to explain to people is that I don't always think through everything that I say or do before saying or doing it. I mean, I'm sure I'll be exposed to a wider audience, but when someone sees a clip of what I'm talking about on Twitch, I'm normally not making definitive statements. I'm just saying that my experience with the game is that, and I have no interest in going to do it because of this. I mean, so if you want to come in and say, hey, I've given a bad take, or you wanted to leave this and you want to give your input and you want to give your opinion, that's fine. But I can't guarantee that I'll be able to listen to and pay a huge amount of attention to it. Because my job is to entertain people, and talking constantly is one of the easiest ways to do that. But I also want to make sure that the entertainment comes at a fairly rapid pace, while I don't say something that I'm going to massively regret later. What's the point of uploading if you don't want people to feel something about it? So, Shep, I don't run the JoshStrifePlays channel. I just Twitch stream and I talk to people live, and the JoshStrifePlays channel uploads the bits that they think people will want to watch and want to be relevant, and then people want to come and have a chat about those specific bits, and that I totally get. Absolutely 100% on board, fully understand. What I think is difficult is that the conversations that get uploaded are normally segments within longer conversations, and because there's segments within longer conversations, people come in after seeing small clips of those and say, hey, this is how I feel about this. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So I'm happy to have the conversations again, but some people are coming in with what they think are either negative connotations, or they're coming in with a more confrontational attitude in general. I mean, Visa does an incredible job of uploading stuff to the JoshStrifePlays channel. Absolutely phenomenal work on his part. But I think a lot of people get annoyed that I don't like what they like, or they get irritated that I'm not saying good things about what they're saying. That's always a challenging thing to try and do. But whenever I'm talking on Twitch, it's much more of a back and forth conversation. The best way I can describe it is, imagine that you and your friends are having a 7 to 8 hour conversation about something with a huge amount of context and intention around it, and then someone overhears, a 10-15 minute segment of that, and then comes in with, well, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about the other? The answer might have been, yeah, we have thought about that. But unfortunately, it's going to be a case of context. Like, I don't care if people don't agree with me. That's absolutely fine. I just want people to be able to understand that I don't hate retail. What was the exact thing that was said? It was an interesting line. It was really interesting. It was the first thing that they'd typed. And it used the word hate, which I think is always strange about that. Because I don't hate that game. They asked, why do you hate retail? I don't. It's just not a game designed for me. If I'd played it, I'm sure I would find some bits in there that I agree with, but I've got a limited amount of time in my day, and I don't want to play something that I don't fully vibe with. When you've got a huge amount of games at your fingertips, it sacrifices pacing and the leveling experience for the faster leveling. I think that the retail pacing is bad. And the reason I think it's bad is because what happens is you start the game and then you go through a decent enough tutorial, to be fair, I actually quite liked the Exile's Reach tutorial that I thought was great. And then you get introduced to all these characters who greet you as an old friend that you've never met before. And I'm like, I'm not your old friend. What do you mean? We've never met. I have no connection with you at all. Why are you talking to me as if we know each other when we clearly don't? Do I feel bad about not playing vanilla server? Not really. Should I? Yeah, first day on retail to be the hero of Azeroth is strange. The pacing is off. That's what it is. I don't mind being heroic, but I don't necessarily want to be a hero, if that makes sense. It's not about being a hero. It's about being a random warrior who chooses to be heroic. The way that I describe this is I don't want to be the chosen one. I want to choose to be the one. That is the difference to me. But in Fable, it was okay. I mean, different games are different, and also, no, I don't particularly care about the Fable games either. When you say, but in Fable it was okay, are you trying to gotcha? Is that the focus of that sentence? Are you going to be like, you say that you don't want this character construction and this specific plot archetype and trope, but in the other one, it is. So, clearly you are wrong and incorrect and inconsistent with your thoughts. No, I don't like the Chosen One trope. Even if you're going to have a The Chosen One trope, which I can understand in certain media does make sense, I always prefer it when the Chosen One trope is actually quite ambivalent until the end. It's like, I like the fact that in The Matrix, one of the first things Neo gets told is that he's not the Chosen One. And then when, Agent Smith says to him, why, Mr. Anderson, why do you persist? And his words are, because I choose to. That is literally him choosing to be the one that they need him to be. The Oracle straight up says to him, you are not the Chosen One. And then Neo does it anyway, which paradoxically makes him the Chosen One. Blade Runner. The whole point of the second Blade Runner, amazing film if you're going to watch it, this is not a spoiler, is he's not who he thinks he is. That's the point. I guess this is why these kind of comments get to me. Because I said I don't like the trope of the Chosen One, and the first thing someone responded was, but you liked it in Fable. Well, no. No, I didn't. What was the exact comment again? But in Fable, that was it. But in Fable, it was okay. No, I find that boring too. The Chosen One trope can work, but it often works when the person who is chosen doesn't want to do it. I like it in Morrowind, where you are the Chosen One, but they also aren't sure if you are or not. But you love Star Wars, not particularly. I find the most interesting characters in Star Wars to be the ones that are there because they choose to be, not because they've been fated to be. Like in Soul Reaver. In Soul Reaver, Kain is attempting to make the Chosen One. Kain is trying to hope that you will change history if he gives you enough chances to do it. What did you make of V in Cyberpunk? I found V a really boring character. I found almost every single character outside of V had more compelling reasons for doing what they were doing. I think the idea of I want to become a legend is remarkably shallow. I just found it dull. I found Jackie's story interesting. I found Evelyn's story interesting. I found Panam's story quite interesting. I thought V was the weakest character. I thought V was just a taxi for the story between the other characters. I'm not saying... I think the gameplay of Cyberpunk was fine. The shooting was okay. V is meant to be you, no? I mean, to a degree, but you also can't actually change anything that really matters. I like the Chosen One of Morrowind, the reincarnated Nerevar. The whole rule ends up being, if you do the things that the reincarnation was meant to do, you are the reincarnation. If you don't do the things you were meant to do, you are not the reincarnation. I just think that I'm getting tired of the gotcha responses. And when they're like, oh, you think this? Well, what about this? I'm like, what do you want me to turn around and say? Be like, oh, you know what, you are right. Yeah, I did say that. I'm going to change my entire opinion. Things can be balanced and nuanced and subtle. And the Chosen One trope can work. It's whataboutisms. It's whataboutisms and gotchas, which show that the person having the conversation with you is not engaging in good faith, because it's really not... People that engage in whataboutisms and gotchas are not normally bothered about the outcome of the conversation as a whole. They're normally just bothered about proving you wrong within one specific situation. And that's what I think irritates me. It's a case of, well, what about this specific thing? Okay. Do you want to talk about that within context of what we're talking about, or are you just trying to make me feel foolish for not being consistent? It's the classic meme of, you critique society, and yet you partake in society. Curious. What do you think about the Chosen One trope in the Wheel of Time? I've not read the Wheel of Time yet, nor have I seen the TV show. So my opinion on that is relatively irrelevant. So they just jump to the next point, then loop back to the original. Yeah, pretty much. Some people confuse the whataboutisms and gotchas as debate. 1 to max takes about 20 hours in retail. You can level in any expansion, but Blizzard will put you in the previous to level up. Yeah, that works. You'll reach max level on your toon before the experience cap. Yes. I think that the problem is that you've built a story upon so many other stories. I don't want to fight all of those guys at the same time. That's the problem. You've built a story on top of so many other stories that making the story work is difficult because it requires previous knowledge and it requires emotional investment that a new player just will not have. You want the new player to have this emotional investment, but you don't build it. You just kind of rely on it already being there. And I think that's what gets me about retail. It is built on a foundation of the player already caring when they don't. That's true. For a new player to play a 20-year-old game, you have to summarize and skim out certain aspects. That's true. If, and this is the problem that MMORPGs are discovering, the strength of the genre is building a long-time sustained story, a long-time perpetual online world. The problem is that the longer that goes on, the harder an onboarding point becomes to find for a new player. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you make the story a constant update of one kind of storyline that refers to old characters and old events, then you are rewarding the long-time players at the cost of making it more complicated for new players to join. And if you don't do that, if you forget the old stories and make every moment an onboarding point, then you are allowing anyone to join at any moment, but given enough time, you are effectively forgetting the long-time players by not rewarding their focus. That's the plan. I mean, MZ's saying as a new player, even Classic is a tad complicated to start in. Yeah, it can be. It absolutely can be, because you're expected to have at least a tiny bit of knowledge of Warcraft 3. I think that Doctor Who is a great example of this. Doctor Who was designed so that every new series was an onboarding point. And the great thing about that is if you don't catch the start of a Doctor Who series, you can just watch the next series and it will work. Now, there are, of course, overarching plots that come back and come back and come back, but you've still got this ability to get into it. I think Star Trek is a great example. Star Trek The Next Generation, almost every single episode is an onboarding point. If someone has never seen Star Trek, you can literally just sit them down with any Star Trek episode and it will work, apart from the rare two-parter ones. I think The Next Generation is the best. So when we talk about MMORPGs, because this genre, was created 25, 30 years ago, and the games have been going on for that long, we are now seeing how they deal with that. How do you deal with a 22-year-old story? Imagine that you and your friends had a Dungeons and Dragons game that had been going on for 22 years. And imagine that someone new wanted to join your game. Do you forget the previous 22 years worth of adventure and allow them to start a new adventure with you? Or do you expect them to catch up with and be interested in the previous 22 years? And there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just what you want it to be. The problem with MMORPGs is they're trying to do both. They're trying to appeal to the old-time players and get the new players involved as well. Final Fantasy XIV did it with the whole Dawn Trail. They basically said, right, the old story's done, the icons are all sorted, we've finished with that whole Endbringer thing, new story. Which some people were like, excellent. Moment to get involved, onboarding point right here. Whereas some people went, it's a shame because I don't really care about this, it's reset. Was it Endbringer? I forget the name of all the expansions. RuneScape 3 did it with Fort Forinthe. Yeah, RuneScape 3 were like, right, we're going to start a new story. Here we go. Endwalker, that was the one. Endwalker. I can't remember the name of all of them. So what's the best choice with MMORPGs? What's the right choice? Do you make every moment an onboarding point at the cost of long-term players feeling like you're not making your story relevant? Or do you look and say, you know what, you've had this story be relevant for the last 5-10 years, this arc has now finished, a new arc begins? The same thing happens with anime. If someone says, right, I want to watch an anime, I really want to get into One Piece, they're like, well, you've got to go back to the start. And that can be intimidating for a lot of people to try and get into. As much as I would like to be able to just use sound bites and just be like, yeah, this is good, this is bad, W's in the chat, L's in the chat, that reduces, to me, that reduces discussion. It reduces conversation to winning and losing. Pokemon started again each season, having Pikachu defeat high-level Pokemon in one episode, it's just a losing starters in the next. Yeah, but they allow them to be onboarding points for new players. So the answer to, how do we pace an MMORPG is we don't know. Different games do it different way. There is no right answer. There is only an answer that appeals to certain demographics or other demographics. EverQuest has just celebrated its 27th year. EverQuest has so many expansions. Some of them reset it. Some of them continue from one to the other. And there is just no way that we know the right thing to do. It's nice to have a range. It depends on your player base. Do you want a player base? Do you want to make a game that is going to reward the long-time players at the cost of making it difficult for new players to enter? Or do you want a game that's easy for new players to enter at the cost of long-time players feeling there is nothing there for them? And there is absolutely no right or wrong answer. Just choices. Hey Josh, I was watching your clips. You mentioned the younger generation doesn't know how to repair the car, and I want to comment. It's not that they don't know how to repair the car, it's that manufacturers are making harden illegal in some cases. Barmem, I completely agree. See, that's the thing with clips, is they don't often show the whole conversation. And the entire conversation was, I basically said, the reason the younger generation can't repair the car is not because they're stupid or because they don't want to repair the car. It's because the car has been created to exist in an unrepairable way, or a way that is not easy to get access to the bits that can be repaired. I think that the entire conversation was actually me discussing the fact that the younger generation is in a shitty situation because even if they wanted to learn how to do it, it's difficult for them to learn how to do it. That's what it was. The problem with the clips is it loses the entire conversation. The entire conversation was basically saying the younger generation are in trouble because even if they wanted to learn how to do it, they're being put in a position where learning is difficult. How am I liking the shaman? You're putting the clips guy through its streaming so much. Yes, I really am. Visa is making a lot of clips. The problem with the clips is, of course, I have to say the correct thing in a soundbite, because people don't want to have a more complex, long discussion. They want a soundbite that they agree with. And you can say things that people disagree with as soundbites, but if they heard them in the context of the whole conversation, then they would agree with them. For example, the soundbite would be, oh, kids today just don't fix anything. And the whole conversation would be, because the things they've been given are made deliberately difficult or impossible to fix. In some cases, illegal, because companies don't want them to have the knowledge about how they fix things. They want them to break and then buy a new product. And when you add that onto it, you suddenly realize that actually, it's not that they don't want to fix anything, it's that they can't. Oh, nobody wants to work anymore. No, nobody ever wanted to work. That's why you have to pay people to do it. Nobody wants to be paid an unfair or an illegally small amount of money to maintain a lifestyle that simply exists to continue facilitating them allowing to work. Nobody has ever wanted to work. That's the point. But people now are starting to become more aware of how exploited they are being in the process of having to work. If it was fun, you wouldn't have to pay people to do it. Oh, the younger generation can't fix the car. Pipe down, Grandad. All right, you have to ask me how to turn your smartphone on every time. Let's maybe understand that there are multiple people with multiple skill sets, and working together is going to be more useful than being confrontational. Yeah, you know what? It's weird when someone says, what's your dream? And then they follow the word with job. What's my dream job? Money tester, where you just give me all the money and I go and see if it works. You know what? In a way, that's just a gambling streamer, to be fair. That's a good point. You raise a very good point there, that job exists. I think I'd make a really good socialite. I think I could probably wear a little red dress quite well. Yo, God, yeah, I love it when they say that millennials or Gen Z have ruined something. I'll tell you a really important talking point. It is important that the enemy is both weak and strong at the same time. And it's very important that you understand that you can hold hypocritical and controversial views to each other, but you must only argue about whichever one favors you at any given time. So it's possible to say The free market is the best thing and the right thing, and the free market will regulate itself, and we should respect that and follow that. But it's also possible to say, oh, millennials and Gen Z have ruined this. I'm like, hang on. Surely that's just millennials and Gen Z following the free market that you said was great. Surely it's just allowing them to purchase what they want and, leverage their own spending power and their own social and economic and cultural norms, and the free market is responding to that. Therefore, they haven't ruined it. The free market just didn't keep up with what they wanted now. Oh no, they've ruined it. What? You can't praise something for being open and flexible and then at the same time dislike the fact that that thing wasn't flexible enough to match the new society in a way that you wanted. That's what I dislike about doublethink. Doublethink simply likes whatever it likes at the time and dislikes whatever it dislikes at the time, without understanding that actually both things will have an effect on each other. Kids today are buying too many avocado toasts to afford houses. Kids today have ruined the housing market. No, I think that was you guys. I think it was the older generation that definitely ruined that. You know for a fact that if everyone today stopped buying avocado toast, there would be an article in the New Yorker saying that the modern generation have ruined the avocado market. You cannot win because these people do not want to be your friend or your supporter. They simply want to see themselves as better than you. So they will complain when you don't do what they like, and then they will complain when you do what they like, but it ruins something else. That's what it is. We've even seen this thing where kids today are ruining the diamond market. And you know what? At this point, good. Kids today are ruining the flame bite market. You've also ruined golf. Ad hoc. You know what? I used to love golf, and then I played actual golf and realized it was really boring. Mini golf, adventure golf, cracking. Love me some mini golf. If there is a mini golf place, wherever I am, we're playing. Crazy golf, adventure golf, mini golf, absolutely brilliant use of time. Driving range, also pretty fun. Actual golf, take it or leave it. Someone once said that golf is a long walk ruined. Pitch and putt, absolutely fine as well. There was nothing wrong with mini golf. Big fan. Big fan of mini golf. Got to be honest, the people in this chat have a serious victim mentality. Blaming boomers fixes nothing. You know what, Pellegrino? You're right. That is true. That is absolutely spot on correct. It is also very important that we do acknowledge that an entire generation is not at fault, because an entire generation is not a monolith. There will be individual people within that generation who have made bad choices, just as there will be people within this generation who are also making bad choices. I think that that's actually a good point. You've brought that back to focus, because if I continue to perpetuate the it's all the boomers' fault, that paints every single person with a broad brush, which is the exact thing that I would push back against. It validates the criticism. So thank you for reminding me of that. We need to make sure that we step back occasionally and say that while there is a generational standard that I believe has shifted, we cannot also paint every single person with the same broad brush. Miku, however, is also correct. Every generation except mine is stupid and wrong. I do think that I agree with the fact that we shouldn't just say this generation is wrong, because that means that every single person born between a certain time period is inherently wrong for virtue of being born there. No, they're not. Standards were different, things were changed. It is true to say that the world has shifted pretty substantially between now and then, but it's not everyone from there's fault. It's almost like there are 8.5 billion people on a massive rock floating through space, and some of them are arseholes. You'd be foolish to not benefit. Absolutely, that's true. It's the prisoner's dilemma. If you were offered the ability to benefit from something and you didn't take it, you are also foolish. Because while you say, no, I'm not going to take this because someone in the future is going to benefit, you don't know for a fact that someone's going to benefit. You would like to hope that you're setting up a situation where people do benefit, but you've also got to acknowledge that there might be a chance that actually people continue to be arrogant arseholes, and the benefit that you have passed on to the future generation in a loving and kind way will just be taken and stolen by somebody else. Absolutely relevant and possible. You can do things with the best of intentions, but it doesn't always mean that what you have left behind is going to get to the person that you left it behind for. And at that point, at what point do you just say, you know what, I'm just going to do the thing for me? Like, if you were told that you could do something that will remove a benefit from yourself, but potentially help a future generation, a future family member, a future friend, a future, community that you aren't part of. But there was a very small chance that actually someone immoral would take advantage of it. Would you do it? Would you sacrifice a guaranteed personal upgrade for a potential better future that may not be stolen, that may or may not be stolen? Some people say no. Depends on the amount of people that help. Some people say yes. Now, having future generations be improved by previous ones relies on more people doing the thing that helps. They say that a society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they will never sit in. You are putting effort, time, energy, money, safety. You're cultivating a thing that you will not benefit from, knowing that other people will benefit from it. But what happens if you spend all of your time planting trees, knowing that you're trying to build a society that you will never benefit from, and then when you are gone, someone comes along, builds a big fence around all those trees, privatizes it, and charges people to visit? That's not what you were hoping would happen. That's not the situation that you wanted to create. Let's say that you were the one that built the fence and you realized, oh, someone's built all these trees. I may as well go and capitalize on that. Are you the fool if you don't do that? There is a level of understanding that, unfortunately, there is an entire subset of humans who will benefit from exploiting people more than building their own thing. And if you are someone who is willing to plant the trees and cultivate them, you have to acknowledge that there will always be people who are going to want to privatize the trees for their benefit in the future. Sometimes we kind of have to understand and remember and focus on the fact that we kind of have to blame the people for doing that. Because otherwise, we are blaming, I think, the wrong people. We are hating the people who are trying instead of the people who are exploiting. Imposter says, I don't think anyone in the last 100 years planted a tree for the next generation. I can guarantee you're wrong with that. You don't even need to meet anyone to know that you are wrong with that. You can sound bitter if you want to about it, but I think that there are a lot of people who are helping. Look for the helpers, as they used to say. Look for the helpers, and you will find them. Also, remember that Twitch chat is not a great place to have a productive conversation. A society does indeed grow great when we put effort into supporting those things that we will never benefit from. But there is just this unfortunate reality that when you build something, there is an almost guarantee that the people that can benefit from it in the future will come along and steal it. But this is a podcast where you interact with the listeners. That's not productive, no? I'd say it is, what the hell. However, we are also dealing with stuff that people have emotional reactions to. And when someone has an emotional reaction online, because they either believe something strongly or disbelieve something strongly, unless you are there to offer some kind of support or validation or understanding, they will seek out somewhere that does offer support and validation and understanding. And often that comes in the form of a feedback loop or an echo chamber who already believe whatever they already believe. And that's dangerous. That can be very dangerous, because you are driving someone further and further and further into not necessarily extremism, but an entrenched view. Like if I say something that upsets someone, but I'm trying to say it for the best reasons because I think that it's a more fleshed out, rounded, fair view of the world. If someone doesn't want to acknowledge that or approach that or interrogate their own view on something, they will seek out some kind of validation that already makes them feel good. You can't control what others do, that's true. But this idea that one generation is entirely wrong is, as was pointed out earlier, incorrect. But it's a risk, it's a dangerous risk to know that you are willingly making your own life worse in order to make the future's life better, while you also know that there is a risk that the sacrifice you are making will not be productive. It really should be. We should be able to learn from each generation before our own. We should be able to stack power. It's basically the entire plot of My Hero Academia. You should be able to stack power from those who came before and support those who come after. Expedition 33. I mean, the guy in India who carved a mountain for a faster route to the hospital. Red Sky, that's an absolutely great example. That is one guy who put his entire life into doing something because that is something that would have benefited him. And in the future, that may become a paid-for toll road. I'm not saying it definitely will, but somebody could just build a toll road there and say, right, you've got to pay to pass through this, which would suck. So there are many people who spend a lot of their life trying to improve other people's lives that then see a lot of the effort and energy they've put in being stolen away, which sucks. So to loop this all the way back round, I can absolutely understand why the current generation is bitter. You think this is why Expedition 33 struck a chord. It was about people working selflessly for the next generation, for something that you don't see. Absolutely. And then Bubble Boy says, I don't know, man. The list of things the boomers messed up for literally every generation is pretty endless. Bubble Boy, yeah, I agree. However, we also have to make sure that we don't just count the boomers as every single person from that generation, because that is painting with a huge broad brush. The same way that anyone from the boomer generation may say, oh my God, all of Gen X is lazy. All of Gen Z is lazy. No, they're not. They're made up of a huge subset of people from many different cultures and backgrounds and ideas. And we have to understand that while there is indeed generational shifts, there are indeed generational shifts, it creates an us versus them class warfare style thing, or kind of, if not class warfare, generational warfare, where we start turning on the people who actually would help us simply because they're connected to a group of people that we have already painted as the bad guy. If you convince every Gen Z that the boomers ruined it and every boomer that Gen Z is lazy, then suddenly you have a generational clash, which means that even people in Gen Z or the boomer generation who actually believe the same thing and would get on are already placing each other as enemies. And we don't want to be doing that. And there is a thing where the boomer generation do this thing where they mock the current generation, and they've done it with avocado toast and whatnot. But actually, when you normalize mocking an entire community, then you dehumanize the people within that community and reduce them down to the mocks. And I don't think that's a productive thing to have become normalized. Yeah, rhetoric is radicalized, as they say. You can have an individual from a society and you will immediately judge that individual based on what you think about or know about that society straight away, instead of getting to know that person as an individual. Now, obviously, a society that an individual comes from is going to influence what they think and who they might be, but there is still a level of individuality that we have to focus on. Yeah, when people start referring to a generation in a negative way, they're only referring to the bad ones. Absolutely. Mr. Arson, some people may not understand that because it requires nuanced thinking. I get that, but if you refer to an entire generation as a bad thing, most people are not going to say, hey, you know what, we should actually think about this more. They're going to say, oh, yeah, God, I totally agree. And slowly, it becomes normalized. Red Sky, yes, it is. You will punish the child for the sins of the father, as they say. It slowly becomes normalized that it's totally okay to dislike a generation based on information in general. When you look at the culture degraded as something horrible, I disagree with that, Jew. I don't think that war necessarily is going to be the answer to it, but I think that's also a conversation way too heavy for Twitch. You saw my comment about tabletop games and my desire for rules not to be a complete answer. Are you aware that Games Workshop actively hire video game developers? I did not know that. No. I mean, I assume that they've got video game developers for the video games. I just don't necessarily know exactly what their roles would or would not be. You don't decide, exactly, you don't decide when or where you were born. You can decide what you want to be. There is a very famous philosopher who once said, the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you choose to do with the gift of life that matters and defines who you are. Do any of you guys know who that great philosopher was? That philosopher was Mewtwo. Why is it that one of the hardest philosophical quotes of our generation came from Mewtwo? And the answer is because Mewtwo was a great Pokemon. Absolute great Pokemon. Gandalf was similar. Mewtwo and Gandalf would have got on. Because anime just does that every now and again. Every now and again, anime will just drop one of the hardest lines you ever hear. And you're like, yep, totally get it. I'll tell you what, though, the Zoomers have ruined Pokemon.